very hopeful that former Royal Marines Commando Pen Farthing and his staff at his animal charity in Afghanistan, along with their families and rescue animals, could get safely out of Kabul. This time yesterday, it was very hopeful.
It was, but despite government assurances given on this programme yesterday that ministers would do everything possible to help Pen and his team, we have heard in the last hour that isn't happening.
Today, we still do not have anything from the MOD. In fact, they've actually cut me off. I did have an emergency line that I could call if I was in trouble or I needed to report something that was going on, and that's been cut. So I've been literally left now on my own in basically enemy-held territory, so to speak. I just can't get my head around that.
Well, joining us now is Secretary of Defence Ben Wallace. Good morning to you. So you can hear there Pen Farthing feeling like he's been left on his own. He has approval from Boris Johnson about him and his staff getting out of the country. He just needs the paperwork to get through to the airport. He's got a plane. He just needs this ISAF flight number to be allowed to fly. What's the problem here?
Well, first of all, a lot of the things you've said aren't correct. First of all, we haven't had ISAF numbers for years. This is not about flights coming into the airport. There are flights leaving all the time. There are space on flights when they are not full, but they are nearly always full. This is about processing at the airport, getting people through those gates. We've got about 3,000 people by the gate that we use. It is also, there's about 15,000 people around the airfield. This is also about all those other people who are waiting at the airport to come on, some of them under really, really acute danger if they were to stay. And it's also, Pen was offered a flight. He's a British passport holder. His wife left, I think, on Friday. We encourage him strongly to make his way to the airport as a British national, to take that. At the moment, he has chosen to stay with both the animals and the pets, as well as his personnel. We have said that his personnel will be eligible or are eligible to resettle in the UK. But that last bit is important because that is not a guarantee of a flight. That is that they have reached the criteria. I've said to you on a number of occasions that not everyone will get out. Obviously, there are different levels of risk. We see on the reporting, and some of the reporters have done amazing work at their own risk outside those gates. There are people that I have to prioritise at the moment to get them out of the country. This is not about anything else. It doesn't matter how many charter planes you fly in. It is simply, I have thousands of people. We took out 2,000 people yesterday. It takes at minimum 24 hours for some of these people to queue, to get to the airport, get through the Taliban checkpoints. I have strongly urged Pen and others to make it with British passports. But when it comes to the animals, I'm afraid I have to prioritise people over them at the moment. There are some very scared and very worried people.
Yeah,
and,
of course. But his position is that
you wouldn't expect me, Charlotte, to push those people out the way.
No, I'm not expecting that. But what he is saying is he's got a plane. He is not going to leave. He's not going to leave because his people, his staff, he believes, are going to be at risk. He needs the paperwork to be able to get them to the airport, to be able to get them out, and that situation isn't happening. And he would put the animals in the cargo where there's no place for people anyway. You can't put people in there.
Charlotte, it's about getting onto the airfield, right? So if he was to get to the airfield now, and it would take roughly 24 hours for his other people to get through, I would have to push people out of the way to prioritise his people onto an aeroplane that is there. That's what I'd have to do. It's not about the plane. It is simply about these people aren't queuing for places. They're queuing for access. And, it takes roughly 24 hours for those people to get through the process.
He did say this morning, Mr Wallace, that he was prepared and ready. He's an ex-Royal Marines Commando. He knows how to be prepared in a crisis. And he said he is prepared to sit for 3 days with his team in the sweltering heat, in those crowds, and wait. If only they had the paperwork that would allow him to believe that there was a strong chance of them actually getting through and not just being left there?
He himself, as a British passport holder, back on the other side of the weekend, has that in place. If he turns up today with his passport... Yes,
but he doesn't want to turn his back on his staff, and you can understand
I
that
understand
human
that,
connection.
And I don't want to... I understand that, but I don't want to turn my back on some people at even greater risk of their lives if if they get pushed out of the way. Okay,
it is extremely difficult. Yeah,
it is extremely difficult. Look, I really urge him to make his way to the airport.
Okay.
We are trying our best. We took 2,000 people out in the last 24 hours and have taken 8,600. No one is blocking planes. There's all sorts of stories about advisors. My advisors don't have the power or the authority to block anything. The airport is run by the United States military. We have planes coming in and out all the time. We don't have plenty of space. If they are there, they will be on it. The only limiting factor is access through those gates. And I think I was on your programme a few days ago when the United States had shut all the gates, and that creates thousands of people waiting on the outside. It's a really difficult call, but I don't believe his animals will be under threat from the Taliban. And I think in a slower period, they will be able to come out at the same time, at a different time.
Now, Ben Wallace, I mean, of course, you seem agonised by, the decisions you're having to make. You can see that. It's not as though you're acting as though this is easy. And that is, in a way, sort of reassuring to see, in some ways, that you feel the pain of the people that you are making life and death decisions about, because that's essentially how these people feel, who are waiting to leave Afghanistan. But what it smacks of is that it's a massive intelligence failure, because it was known that this date was approaching. As Lisa Nandy, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, said this morning, France had started to process people out earlier, that this came as a complete surprise when it shouldn't have done. And that is why you are now on this programme having to make these very difficult choices. And that is why people like Pen Farthing are stuck there. It's because there was a massive intelligence failure, and the UK has to take responsibility for that, and your government has to take responsibility for that. So
look, I know people are trying to find a single point of failure and someone to blame. So first of all, your point on the French left military operations in 2014. So they haven't been providing military operations in Afghanistan for, 7 years. And therefore, it is an entirely different issue for them. Yes, they have some people, very few numbers. We are the second biggest cohort of people to get out after the United States. So first of all, you can't compare it. Secondly, as Lisa Nandy, I think on your own show, you demonstrated that Lisa had been a supporter of the deal that led to where we are right now. And thirdly, I think you have a valid point about the international community's assessment, and it wasn't just Britain, but across the international community, the assessment of the Afghan government's persistence in place and how long it would persist in the face of the Taliban onslaught. And I think the international community absolutely should have been more vocal about the deal and the consequences of the Doha deal for what it meant for Taliban success. But the actual final days, the final hours, I think if you look at the collapse of the Soviet Union, you look at the collapse of the Saddam regime, it does, and I think people have a valid point, it falls into that space of it always collapses faster at the very end than people think.
And is there any chance of this extension? We know there's this virtual G7 meeting today. Boris Johnson expected to speak to President Biden about extending that withdrawal date, but obviously the Taliban have to agree to it. So is there any chance of trying to get more people out with the time that's left?
So two things. I think it's slim chance of an extension beyond the 31st of August. Of course, we'd like it. We'd want it. We've talked about it with our allies. The G7 will no doubt talk about it today. I look at the public statements by President Biden. I listened to what the Taliban said yesterday to the media, and I think it is unlikely. That's why we have been planning for the worst. Of course, we hope for the best. It's also why internally we changed some of our own timings about withdrawing our military forces. Originally, about a week and a half ago, the timescale to draw out our military was about 120 hours. We have managed to cut that significantly, and every hour we save in taking out our own military is an hour we can process more Afghan claimants and people under the scheme, like Pen's people. I think that is really important, and every hour matters.
OK, Defence Secretary there, Ben Wallace, thank you for joining us. We understand it's a difficult juggling act for you, prioritising people at the moment, but thanks for joining us this morning.